Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to World Talk episode number 2 on Dom's channel. Once again, I'm taking control, taking the reins for some reason, but it is a pleasure to be back here, especially after the good reception from the first episode. Last time around, we finished off the first stages of groups. Now we're done with the round robin. Now we know our top 8 teams. And before we go into our top 8 teams, I think starting this second episode of World's Talk with a simple slogan that East is better than West. Did we expect anything different? Dom, I'll kick it over to you, because each year we go through Worlds, we have this huge, margin that East is going to hit, and I think, once again, it's kind of been hit, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not the best showing. I guess it was worse than I expected. I didn't think that NA was actually going to go 3-15, because, I mean, last year, I felt like NA was probably at its absolute valley, like, the worst that it's ever been, and they ended up somehow winning, I think, like, eight games. I think it was, like, 8-10 was the record. So I was expecting them to just sneak out more wins. I was surprised at the fact that no NA team was able to beat any Chinese or Korean team in a best of one. Like, you think that generally if you play only best of ones, you'd be able to at least cheese them, have some strategy, or just get a good draft and be able to win out. But yeah, I mean, this was a historic failure for the LCS. I mean, I think that this was almost as bad as it can get. I mean, obviously you could go 0-18. That was on the table, but 3-15 is that's pretty down there. I mean, especially considering you have a PCS. It's not like you only played against EU, Korea, and China. You had a PCS team in one of the groups, and 100 Thieves split games with them. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much a nightmare. I mean, you as well, Nelson, before I kick it to you. You said, what did you say in our last show, Dom? Excuse me. You say 3 NA wins? Because you kind of hovered around more than I, which is, right on the nose, by the way. I thought we're only looking at one. Faithful.
You are. Nelson, thoughts on disappointments, or rather how you rounded it out?
I mean, I think week 2 was very similar to how I thought World should have been, where there probably should have been, eight Asian teams leaving group stage into the bracket stage, but I think TS were just a few auto attacks short, so it's a bit unlucky.
Oh god.
At least for a tiebreaker, right? I'm pretty sure they would win the tiebreaker, but yeah, it was a bit rough watching the TS games.
And look, we'll go into that, because there's a lot of discussion I want to have about that. Any skeptics off the table, of course, but you're saying 8 Asian teams. I mean, the fact that we do have Rogue is going through is nice, because it's not just LCK versus LPL. But I want to start with Group A, because, this group definitely is LCK versus LPL, with the massive gap built out. And Nelson, back to you again, because, EDG, I was kind of expecting to top this group, but T1 came in with such a rocket to finish off the second round robin.
I think it's just EDG didn't have the best understanding of the meta, and also, at least for myself, I think it's very hard for EDG to actually get the same level of motivation again. I mean, they are the defending champions, but it's so rare for especially so rare for Chinese teams, the same Chinese team, to win twice in a row. It almost never happens. Yep,
it's rough. I mean, T1 versus EDG, I think T1 is playing better than I expected, mainly because T1's getting out of their own way. When I was watching T1 and LCK, it felt like they didn't understand what their strengths as a team were. They would play Zeus on weak side top laners every single game. It was Mordekaiser weak side, Gnar into Aatrox, he's playing Orin into Aatrox. He would only play weak side top laners, and I thought that was going to be a big problem for T1 if they stayed with that mindset. And for me, I don't really know what changed, how they were able to mentally get over that hurdle, but the team looks completely different when Zeus is playing his carries, when he's able to play. I mean, the Jace game is whatever, that game didn't even count, but when he's able to, actually play champions like Fiora, champions like Gangplank, if he's on those picks, I feel like the team is significantly better. I didn't think his Jax was the best, but I think Fiora is super important to this tournament, and I think the ability to play Gangplank is going to be really important, especially as we go forward, because I mean, the first matchup, T1 versus RNG, that's obviously going to be 2 carry top laners battling, but a lot of the other top laners at this tournament that you're going to be running into, 369, potentially Doran, these guys, I mean, maybe somehow if IWDominate ends up and Rogue ends up beating JDG, maybe IWDominate, these top laners, it feels like their champion pools are really susceptible to a Gangplank pick. And I think that could be really good going forward in this tournament. So I'd say T1 played better than expectations.
Yeah, it's a good point as well, considering on the Zaya's point that he's been talked about as one of the best top laners at the tournament, you know, and especially with 369 in that conversation. I'm kind of glad we're on that side of the bracket. But before we go into that, Nelson, I want to get your takes here because, you know, we already touched on Cloud9, Fnatic, like their performance in this group. You know, week 2 was kind of the week of Asia once again. But what were your thoughts? Because, I mean, you used to be so heavily involved in the LPL, and I want to get your take on EDG once again and how they rounded out.
As in compared to in their group or compared to the rest of the field? Compared
to their group, because week 1 versus week 2, I think week 1 there were a lot of concerns. Week 2 though, it was obvious that T1 were kind of the best in the group to round out.
I mean, I think like even during week 1, I think like T1 was the best except for the minor blip against Fnatic, where they made a serious mistake in the bot lane. But in the EDG against T1 the second time around, I feel like they were just a little bit too impatient because they had a better scaling draft. They were doing fine in the early game, but they had to take multiple fights, and I don't think Flandre played very well in like the tank against carry matchups in the top lane. I feel like
he ran it down.
Yeah, I know he ran it with his Maokai. But I feel like you either have to match and then see how and then play out the early game, because I do think the Chinese teams, they play out early game better, especially in like carry against carry top like matchups.
Yep.
So it's something they would probably have a chance to try if they meet again later in the tournament.
Yeah, hopefully, especially since Flandre is a pretty flexible champion pool. I mean, we've already seen he's had some pretty good performances in this tournament. He's done what Flandre does, which is roam to mid. I think one of you guys were talking about it last episode. A very Flandre move where he just in unexpected places, unexpected timings. I'll leave it there because look, that's a pretty easy sealed deal in Group A. For Group B though, moving forward, I think again we said it around the first round. JDG Dumwon had one of the best games, you know, in the first round robin. Dom in the second round robin. I mean, the tiebreaker was great. Just watching JDG was great. Like versus Dumwon Kia, these were really fun matchups.
Definitely. I mean, JDG is a team where their games just look like this. You just have to get used to these. If you've watched enough JDG, you just know that you're going to be in for some bangers like this. And it is what it is. You know, like they don't really just like grab control of the game and just beat you the entire time. Like they're just the team that will keep on coming at you. But I value that a lot. I think that's almost more impressive. Like that tenacity is more impressive than just having like sheer discipline, because a lot of times when you see the front runner teams, like if they ever lose control of a game, they just give it up. You know, it's just like they're almost doing nothing. For example, like a team that in LPL that reminded me of that was like EDG last year. You know, it's like EDG when they're winning, they won, and when they were losing, it's like maybe we get a team fight, everyone's farming. Like they don't really like to make like those risky plays to get back in. So I feel like JDG is like the epitome of what an LPL team should be. You know, like this is the ideal LPL team for me. And yeah, I mean, I think the Dumwon actually looked really good. I think Dumwon's a really strong team, and I think that the meta shift actually should benefit them quite a bit. I like the idea that Duck Dom can play Philios again. I like seeing Graves coming back into the meta, potential Viego picks, Lee Sin for Canyon. I think that this is exactly what you want. Part of the reason why I don't think Dumwon was able to surprise people, or they were able to do that well domestically, or win domestically, is because they were stuck in a meta where Poppy, Trundle, like Sejuani, all these champions were just the absolute top tier of jungle, and that just doesn't play towards their strength. So I hope to see more Canyon, Graves, Canyon, Nidalee, all these types of picks.
Dude, Grand Canyon's back. He's been taking over games, you're right. Like, it has been such a joy watching him in the jungle. One of the most enjoyable teams to watch as well. I'm glad they're in the same group with JDG. Nelson, your thoughts on how this group rounded out?
I mean, I'll say it's pretty expected, right? Like first seed LPL and then third seed Korea. But I was quite impressed with JDG actually, because I think so many of the fights against that one, they were pretty far behind. I would say 4 or 5k behind, and they still managed to find the angles to win. And it is what I expected TES to be, but I guess it's JDG now.
Yeah, look for JDG as well. They have a lot of that flair. 2 cents on drafting as well, Nelson, because last episode we were talking a little bit about some of the picks. What have you thought about JDG's drafting, considering more of the flexibility on 369. We know that your Gao has been playing quite well in a stable role too. I wanted to get your take on how JDG have been setting up some of these games.
I mean, I think they have like a pretty decent understanding of drafting, where I think they were one of the earliest LPL teams to prioritize this year. And I know that 369 he can also play the carry tops, but if the meta does actually shift to Gangplank, I actually think he's probably the best Gangplank in the world.
Godlike.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I had some of his ex-teammates with me before on the same team, and I talked to them, and he's like, yeah, 369 only plays Gangplank, and that was like 3 years ago, and right now he's even better.
Oh crap. Dude, I can't wait. And I'm glad as well. Like, we got a little, a little bit of LPL bias, but also really, reality to it as well. Props on JDG. Props on Damwon Kia. A 5-1 finish for Group B. We'll go to Group C because on the other side of the coin, I mean, this is my greatest disappointment. I told you who I got, guys, who I had for Crystal Ball. Top Esports. Yeah, that was a really rough game. I mean, it was a fun game against Gigabyte Marines. And say what you want, bug, whatever. We won't go into it here, but it's just so close, but not enough, Dom.
Yeah, it was close, but not enough. It was one of those games where you just felt like it wasn't Top Esports like really playing, and I think that their understanding of who they are was off. Like, if you tell me that you are now going to be in like a Lee Sin, Viego, Graves meta, and you have Tian on your team, like, just go back to spring meta. Tian played Viego like every game in spring. Yeah. Like, he was literally only playing Viego nonstop. So like, why would that not be the angle? Like, that's the perfect Tian champion. That's, it's a carry jungler. He's good at the champion, but also it has the ability to gank early, and he can use the fact that he's one of the smarter junglers. He's really good at pathing to his advantage. So I was really disappointed in how they decided to play. Like, just, I mean, that Gam game where Silas is up and then you don't see Knight playing. It's like, dude, you had to ban Knight Silas every game in LPL. It's like you couldn't give Knight Silas. That was one of the rules of LPL. So I don't know why when they went internationally, it felt like they didn't remember like who they are. It's almost like whatever happened in scrims just gave them a false impression of like what was going to actually work on stage, which is like, yeah, it's just really tough because also you got to remember that teams like TES are probably only scrimming other top tier teams. Like, if you're a top 2 team from LPL, that normally means you're going to be scrimming like T1, like EDG, Genji, like Dom1. That's pretty much it. You're going to be scrimming. Yeah, you're only going to be scrimming like the top tier because once teams start scrimming, they realize like, the fucking NA teams suck. Like, kick them out of the bracket. Like, they just have to scrim each other by the end of the. I mean, it just is what it is. Like, you ask the NA teams like, who are you scrimming? It's like, when you're a 1 seed, you get to scrim a couple blocks against the top Asian teams, then you get like 5-0'd, and then they're like, all right, you guys, like, go like play over in your like fucking kiddie pool. Like, we're gonna go over here and play with the big boys. So, it just is what it is. Like, they like Top Esports, they needed to be more realistic. They just needed somebody who was like detached from those scrims, just being like, hey, remember when you guys like were like some of like the best Silas and Viego players in the entire world? Yeah, just pick those champions, just relax, pick those champions, ban Maokai, like Wayward, just pick Gnar or some shit. Like, just be yourselves, and you guys will beat these teams easily. Like, you don't have to do anything crazy to beat GAM.
Actually, I think, just to correct you on the point, I think they do scrim like the NA or EU teams, because you have to arrange like 2 weeks in advance, and I've been arranging for quite a few teams, so I kind of know they have been scrimming some of the NAU teams, but maybe
that's why they got worse.
Maybe that's why, but I still think their drafts have been extremely bad, especially the first game against GAM. Even though I thought it might not matter, right? Because it's Gigabyte Marines, but it looks like it mattered in the end.
Yeah, it's a shame as well. I mean, losing that identity is what made Top Esports such a great team. Like, their mid game was so triumphant, and I loved watching people like Wayward settle into the year, especially Knight. In the early stages of Worlds, I thought, okay, well, Knight's kind of bringing his flair as well. There's a lot to go over at Top Esports. There's a lot of bias that I want to be sad about as well. However, at the end of the day, I mean, this is the one EU team making it through. Nelson, if you want to kick us off, just give me a quick touch up on Rogue, because I think this team has been super impressive, and I think more so starting all the way in the grand finals against G2 to now, Rogue has just kind of been on a tear.
I think like the strength of EU has always been figuring out like what is the most OP champs on the patch, and not or like most OP champs in the current week, and not being like delusional about it, which sometimes I would have experienced it in Asia or in LPL when I was there, where people thought that, you know, yeah, I can handle Azir, it's no problem, but looks like that isn't the case, right? And I think that's EU's strength. And if the meta shifts slightly in between groups and playoffs, I'm not sure if JDG have like can adapt on stage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I think it's not easy for them because they are also like the only team which has a top laner which cannot play carries left in the playoffs.
True. I mean, Odo's been pretty strong. Again, talking about Rogue, yeah, I heard you say JDG, Nelson, but I'm assuming you're still talking about Rogue. But you're right. I mean, Odo's been solid, but like we're talking about Odo on things like Maokai as well. We're looking at frontline tanks. And I think on the other side of the coin, for DRX in the same group, I think we're getting a very different identity for what is being called, I think, the LPL fifth seed by Lyric on broadcast at one point, Dom. Like, DRX are also a really fun team to watch, but also, like, quite explosive when it comes down to it.
Yeah, DRX are really explosive. I want to see how they fare when they actually are forced off, like, the Silas Akali, or if, like, the Silas Akali are put in, you know, bad matchups, because it seems like DRX are a completely different team when Zika has agency than compared to like when he's playing Azir. I mean, it's kind of similar to Knight, to be honest, where like I felt like when Knight was playing Azir, like he just wasn't able to really affect the games. I mean, he's able to like win his lane, get 10 CS lead, whatever. It doesn't end up translating into anything. So I think that the prep going into like the DRX games, I think it's going to be pretty hard for DRX to get like the same advantages that they got. I'm assuming just Heimer ban is just going to be straight off the top, like Heimer ban every single game because they played the Heimer Ashe, like Heimer MF, whatever. I think that'll be just right off the top. And then potentially they're either going to like ban Akali and then early pick Silas, or just try to get him on Azir, because I think that is something that could be an angle for beating DRX. So I'm not sure how good DRX are. I still feel like they're the weakest out of all the Korean teams that are left. But I mean, EDG did not look good, so I think that this one is going to be like really close. I just feel like DRX should be easier to prep for than other teams.
It'll be an interesting take when we get into it as well, because we'll be talking about the best of 5 shortly. But quickly, let's go to Group D and finish things off, because, you know, Group D was pretty much like B. It was like JDG DK, it was RNG Gen G, who stomped over 100 Thieves and Flying Oyster, who I will say for the PCS representative, like, PCS, I thought would be a little bit better. I thought Rest and Mission, you know, were great laners. Gemini was one of the best PCS junglers, but I'm then kind of reminded that, you know, this team has not a great playoff format and also has a bit of weakness within the region itself. But putting that aside, you know, RNG still, I think, quite impressive, Nelson. Is that the word you'd use? Because despite some rougher laning phases, and despite maybe Xiaohu not being as pleasant as I thought, I still feel like RNG have been overall a lot better than expected, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was speaking with Dom like a few days ago, right, where I just told him that, yeah, what I was told is that I think like half or almost everyone in the LPL teams were ill, and I think RNG, they look extremely ill on stage, unwell on stage.
Yeah, they look like they're dying.
Yeah, they look like
they actually look really sick.
Yeah. And I would just put an asterisk on their performance, right? Because they were really not feeling well. But I was still quite surprised that they managed to beat the other two teams that easily.
Yeah.
And I think they are probably the most dangerous, like second seed out of the group.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay, well, we can hit on that in a second. Dom, do you want to round this group up for me? Genji obviously came into it in the second round robin. I mean, so did all LCK teams, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Genji is obviously really good. I mean, they still have the same strengths. I mean, Doran's still a liability. But I think that Genji needs to be more realistic with who they are as a team going into the Domlon series. Because if they're just going to be playing, like, carry jungler versus Canyon, I feel like that's not going to end well. That's, like, not what you want to be doing when you have, you know, Peanut versus Canyon. I think Peanut needs to drop the ego and the Graves and, you know, play his stuff. Play some Maokai, man. Like, play some Poppy when it's good. You know, there's no shame in the Poppy game, man. Like, that is who you are. That's who you were during all of LCK. You're not a Graves player. Like, I mean, he could play it, but he's not, like, you can just tell which players could play it and which players are just like faking it when they play it. Like Canyon's a Graves player, Kanavi's a Graves player, Tian's not a like Tian and Peanut are very similar in the ways that they looked in summer, right? Like they're the guys that are playing they're smart about the game, they're the veterans, they know what lanes to gank, they know where to be on the map. That's conducive to playing these early game tanks that have gank ability. That's what I want to see him on. So I think if Gen G just like try to like, instead of trying to adapt perfectly to the meta, like force the meta into your own style and they just play what is good for them, I think that they'll like be able to win.
Okay, Dom, you were talking about like you can see like who is not comfortable on certain champs. So what do you think about the North American poppies?
Oh man, the North American poppies. But that's what I'm saying. It's like North American players, like, I mean, Closer's like a Viego player, right? He's a Viego player, he's a Lee Sin player, like that's what he's best on. I wish that he was playing more of that, and like, you know, maybe you just ban out the things that are specifically bad against your like Lee Sin or your Viego. So maybe you're banning out the Poppy, but I mean, it's so frustrating to see people just pick champions because they think that they're strong, but then play them at like 50% effectiveness instead of picking something that they're really good at. Like that's what I want to see at Worlds. I want to see like the Canyon fucking Graves popping off versus like the Peanut and Poppy Trundle. You know, like I just want to see that dynamic where you're seeing people play things that they're actually really good at, which is one of the reasons why I like RNG, is because RNG, like, they just play their like Lissandra, Galio, like they play their style at least with their like Fiora, Jax, whatever top lane. And I think that that's just a better way to you know, play. I don't think the idea that all teams can play everything is super good. So I definitely think Gen G's strong. They look like a top 3 team at the tournament right now. If I were to say like who's looking the absolute strongest, I mean, I would probably just say that like T1, Gen G, and JDG look like the favorites right now. But RNG I think is really scary. I think that they're a team that no one wants to face. So RNG versus T1, that's going to be a banger.
It really is. And again, you know, hidden surprises all around. I want to quickly move from this because we can start talking about the best of us shortly. But for you guys, quickly, we won't look at biggest surprise of the group stage. I think there are many surprises there, and I think top esports or maybe NA's wins are an easy solidifying factor in that, if you guys agree. Is there any big surprises that I've missed that you guys see in the group stage here that is worth mentioning?
I think for me, just the amount of gap that there was between the playoff teams, like the teams that moved on into the playoffs and the ones that got eliminated in groups. Like there was a stat or something like it was 1-25 without the top esports games. So like top esports of like from, you know, people that got eliminated to the people that moved on. Which is crazy. Like that amount of consistency just shows how good all these like top 8 teams are. So I thought that was really, really crazy when I saw that stat earlier today on Reddit. I think it was like 3-27, including the top esports wins. But yeah, I mean, that's just absolutely absurd. Like that is just really such a crazy level of consistency.
It's a massive gap. Nelson, any surprises I missed or that Dom didn't cover?
I mean, not too many, but I mean, there were some where I think we all thought before World started that the players from the East were better in laning, but I did not expect like the NA ball lanes to be under the tower 40 CS down every game. I think that was quite surprising to me because I didn't think the gap was that big, you know, but it looks like it was.
Oh, no, I mean, look, Nelson, when I saw a support first timing and win a championship, like, I just knew it was doomed for the rest of them. Like, if this, like, you take an AD carry who's, like, never played support before. He plays support for the first time. He wins a championship in, like, 3 months. It's like, yep. I don't think our bot lanes are too good. I don't think that they're that practiced.
It's quite funny because actually, like, I know Sven is, like, good friends with Mickey X, and he's always been asking Mickey, like, well, you know, what items do I buy on this support champs? And Mickey X is like, just go Moonstone and, what's it called? Redemption every game if you don't know what to buy. And that's what he did. Oh my God. And he won NA.
Wow. Oh, it says something, doesn't it? Hey, MVP for the group stage, Dom. Have you got an MVP player last time around? I can't remember. We were talking about Yagao, I think, quite a lot for JDG. Has anything changed to finish off the round robin?
Let me think. MVP of group stage? I think it's really hard to say. I mean, maybe I would go somebody like Zika. Like, I think Zika had a pretty solid, like, I mean, he pretty much played as well as you could expect him to in all of his matchups. I think that he had like one not so great game on the Zir, but outside of that, like, I mean, he looked super solid.
Nelson.
Um, I think my MVP would be Wei from RNG.
Nice.
It's just like he can play, or at least he's a player in his role. He can play everything, and
True.
it's just very fun to watch him, especially when he's just laughing on camera.
Yeah. God, I would love to give MVP to 369. However, I don't think I've thought it through enough. I just feel like the Aatrox game is probably swinging the metric too far in his favor. That was an explosive game as hell. But in that regard, I could give something to Canyon as well. But my opinion doesn't matter. That's why I'm here hosting. What does matter is what you guys think was it's been called the Dade Award in the past. You know, someone who's been so hyped up and not really showed to the level. I don't think people have really hit that Dade Award even in other years. But if there was something close to give, someone who you were hyped for, who you thought was going to really show up and be massive but failed to hit the mark, Nelson, to start with you, is there someone who you'd give that kind of award to?
I mean, can I choose the entire team?
You can give. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I have to choose Top Esports because I thought this could be their year to, you know, make it deep in the tournament, but I think they're a bit unlucky. But also, yeah, week one, three horrible games with horrible drafts, and they're just out of the tournament. It's just very cruel.
Dumb.
Yeah, my Dade award has to go to Tien. My fucking goat just didn't show up. Made me look like an idiot. I was the biggest Tien hater at the beginning of the year, and it took me so long. Like, he won so many games, and I had to watch so many games of him playing well, and I was still skeptical.
Yeah. And
And then finally, when I converted to the Church of Tien, this is what happens, man. It was so sad. It was so sad. He gets my Dade. I know he's so much better than what he showed, which is really like frustrating. And I just think that, like, if somebody just like reminded, it's like, dude, you don't need to play the meta. Like, you just play your champs, man. Like, you saw the game where he played Viego. If he plays like 3 Viego games, like, dude, they're like, he's just not gonna be losing those games. Like, I mean, he's too good.
It's frustrating. It's so frustrating. Like, watching a team all split, you know, because Dom, you've been there, and Nelson, I know you watch plenty of LPL as well. Watching this team, not even just all split, but all year, getting to this culmination of tournament, second seed, a great grand finals, despite Jackie Love inting it in Game 5. You see how good this team can be. And it is so frustrating watching them play the games that they did and think, well, you're better than this. You're like a disappointed dad, you know, watching your son fail miserably, right?
I mean, I feel like the difference between like LPL and Worlds is like, I mean, during LPL everyone just goes all out, but during Worlds, especially in best of one, like there's something which, you know, holds the teams back, and it's more reliant on like macro and, you know, timings to group. And I think TS has always been like traditionally one of the worst teams in terms of macro for many years already. So maybe that's the issue they face when they can't like overpower teams.
But I thought they fixed that. Their mid-game this split especially was just such an improvement. That's why it's so frustrating.
They didn't fix it in the finals, I think.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Gents, I want to move forward because I realize we've taken up a lot more time than I expected, hitting on the end of the groups, because now we have to go to fan comments before we go into the best of fives. Dom, we've kicked open with this, and this is a nice little icebreaker, because you've been put as number 1 by our production team, and you've actually noticed a trend with Tien, right? And this is one of your tweets that came out recently, saying that Tien went 2-4 in 2021 on FPX, 3-3 in 2022, and you've now layered that as like stepping stone, like stairs, like it's going to get better and better each year. So,
yeah. So he's going to go 4-2 next year, probably make it out of groups with that.
Right.
5-1 the year after, and then he's getting the final 6-0, the undefeated group stage in 2025. So Tien believers, we just have to wait a few more years, and then, you know, he'll be shitting it on everyone at Worlds again.
True. Okay. Well, good little reminder there as well.
You know, actually, I saw it on like on Weibo and on Reddit. Is that like Tien has almost the same trajectory as last year, you know, on FPX. Where FPX, you know, he finished 5th, and then runners up in playoffs, and then 1st in summer, and again runners up in playoffs, and in the end, both of them didn't make out of groups, right? Because last year, last year his coach had red hair. This year his AD carry had red hair, and they both didn't make out of groups. It has to be the hair.
Holy crap, it's a bad luck sign. Number 2 for our tweet, though, moving forward is, someone said, imagine being an LPL LCK team where you play 0 best of 1s the entire year, and then, well, domestically, of course, and then you have 6 decide your entire year. I mean, it is kind of crazy, like, you guys have more of a coaching, playing background, you know, so much more than I do by a million years. So I wanted to kind of ask you, Dom, is like, the difference between BO1s and BO3s, and maybe just lying that out quite simply as like a TLDR, as to how these 6 BO1s shape their entire year when they've not played any domestically.
Yeah, so for me, at least the way I see it is when you go into a BO1, any champions, when you're doing your prep, they're like this is something that they're pretty good at, but I think that we have a counter. Like, we can give it to them, but then we like have a counter. I think you just throw those out in BO1s and you just ban what they're strong at, and you have to just play like a standardized game.
Right.
So I just think that that's just the major difference between like BO1 and BO3 is that BO3s, if they have champions that they like, let's say it's something like a Chovy Azir, you can be like, oh, we can give him like Azir this game, and then we'll try like our counter pick, whatever. Let's say you have a crazy counter pick, our Xerath or like our Vel'Koz into it. Like, we have this counter. You try it for a game. If you lose it, then you're like, fucking ban the Azir, and you can like run it back with a more standardized draft. I think that in BO1s, you just have to like just respect the things that they're strong at and just try to play like try to get not as not as crazy draft advantages.
I think like best of 3s or best of 5 is just a completely different game, right? Because I think LCK and LPL coaches have a different type of style, where LCK coaches, they either have they like to open the series very tight, where, you know, they ban all the OP champs, or very loose, where they just leave everything open. But for LPL teams, especially the coaches at Worlds right now, I do know some of them very well, and they like to open a series with like a special pick, or even like a pick which you've never seen before in a different role, so that they can gain advantage throughout the series. And in best of 1, you can never do that. You always have to play safe. You always have to pick scaling if you're against like a similar level team, and it makes it kind of boring, and of course very difficult as well.
Interesting thoughts. At the very least, look, an insight that I think is important, considering that those 6 best of 1s, you know, we've seen many LPL teams either die by the sword or live by it as well, LCK as well. Moving forward, though, tweet number 3 says, T1 versus RNG. It is the most played international head-to-head in history. This series is almost a 10-year anniversary since the first one. Were you guys around in 2013 Worlds? Because I think 2014 was the first finals I saw. But I mean, okay, look, Dom, you're around.
Definitely.
You're old. No
I mean, I went to Worlds in 2012. I was a veteran by 2013.
Oh, you're a spectator already?
Yeah. I was.
You're co-streaming already? In 2013?
No, I was banned actually from LCS at that point. I was literally just I was literally just forced out of LCS, or I would have made it in 2013 as well. Just saying. Like,
look at where you are now. 2013 Worlds. Nelson, I have no idea in your position.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching it, but I actually worked with the support player then, which is Tabe. I worked with him then, so yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, so he told me it was not possible to win.
Oh my god.
He told me it was too hard.
Yeah, I got my ass beat the next year. I got robbed of an LCS World spot the year after that because their top laner came over in that LMQ team, which was just an LPL team. It's literally just an LPL team. They just came and played in LCS and just like beat our ass for no reason. And like because of that, the next year they're like, you know what? Maybe we should make an import rule because we're just gonna have LPL over here. Like if we don't do something fast, like it's just gonna be 8 LPL teams. They're just gonna relegate everyone one by one until there's just not one American in the LCS.
I mean, you guys have like a United Nations there already, so
yeah, pretty much.
Yes. Maybe they shouldn't have the rule in the first place.
Yeah, let's do it again, don't worry. Finally, number 4, our last question, or our last statement, I guess. With the 7 games of T1 RNG as well, so we get a bit of T1 history lesson that have been played this year, so, you know, MSI. We actually have an RNG win, T1 win, RNG win, like it's alternating the whole time. So technically, if we're up to RNG win, if it's back and forth, that means quarters is up to T1. I just say it, like it's written in the history, written in the script. But it's kind of interesting that we have actually had some recent history as well of T1 RNG outside of the 2013 and it's 2014. No, 2014 was Samsung White. So 2013 was SKT, sorry. So we do have a bit of history of T1 RNG, but especially leaving on that note as well, that'll lead us perfectly into the segue of going into our best of fives, finally getting into some quarterfinal action. I've been waiting for this because, honestly, group draws always talked about. I know there's a lot of public statements about how we, look at this format, and it can be region versus region a lot of the times. It can kind of be, like a knife party where, LPL knocks itself out in quarters and then has to deal with it in semis, or LCK otherwise. Nelson, I'll get you to kick this off. JDG versus Rogue. Again, I think it was a very good draw. I think we could kind of agree was one of the best outcomes, especially with JDG and Rogue opening up, which is going to be a hard matchup for Rogue, but nevertheless, a testing for JDG.
I think they have like differing strengths in terms of like where their laners are. I think Rogue, clearly they have the better bot lane, but they still need to fix their drafts and not pick random champions in the bot lane. And JDG has by far the better top laner. It's not even close. And even in tank versus tank matchups, I think he's also one of the better tank players in LPL. He'll probably be like top 2 together with Flandre. Right. And I think it's rough.
Okay.
No, in like tank matchups, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I saw Flandre play that Ornn into Zeus Fiora. It did not look good.
It was not fun, but yeah, but I think Zeus is also another beast on his own. I think it's rough. It's rough for Rogue unless they have like multiple strats prepared. Otherwise, I think it could be like 3-1, but yeah.
I don't think they get a game. I think it's just a hard 3-0, like a 2-hour, 20-minute series is what I'd predict. If anything else happens, it'd be really hype. Maybe Rogue can come up with something. And I've been a Rogue doubter for like forever, pretty much. I've always been a Rogue doubter. I don't think I've believed in them before, but I've never been correct when I believed in them. So like when I've doubted, I've only been wrong once, and when I believed in them, I was wrong every time. So now I'm just a Rogue doubter for eternity. I actually thought they were going to get out of the group, but I'm just a Rogue doubter. I don't see like where their advantage is going to come from in this series.
So you can't even put it on bot if what Nelson was saying, better bot lane. If Rogue were to win a game, or even the very, very unlikely stance that they win the series, where would it come through from Rogue Dom? Would it be that bot lane that Nelson said?
I think it would be just draft diff. Like if they're able to somehow like get tanks plus like control mages plus scaling bot lane, or like an enchanter or something, because Trimby has like the super like wide enchanter pool.
Yep.
Maybe they just get like a turbo draft and they're able to just win from there.
I think like how Rogue has been winning most of the time is like having a stable top side and brute forcing bot lane. But the thing about JDG is they always pick good scaling, and it looks like they can win team fights even from 5k down. So I'm not sure even if like Kalista Soraka can save Rogue.
Okay. Well, 3-0-3-1, strong support for JDG. Of course, in my pick'ems, I'm going to do the exact same. Don't worry. T1 RNG is the next matchup, which maybe is a little bit more on the line. Dom, if you want to open this one up, we've talked about history before. We've talked about the players a little bit coming through as well. And actually, both of you have mentioned this matchup now outside of this segment. So obviously, there's a lot of thought going around as to how you think T1 RNG is going to evolve.
Yeah, I'm scared for both teams, to be honest. I feel like both teams are really like good at their own things. But I just hope that we actually get a good match, and RNG is not just like too sick, because I remember hearing that they weren't like really scrimming before this last day of group stage. Like they were just too sick to scrim. They even tweeted out they had to cancel a bunch of scrims. And they looked really sick. Like when I was like looking at the player cams, like I don't know, like Ming is like his head down during like draft and stuff. Like it just looked rough. So I hope that we actually get to see both teams playing at a high level, and RNG isn't just like too ill to play.
Great. Nelson, your take on this matchup to kick us off?
I think the most interesting thing is that T1 finally has side selection, so we could see if blue side is OP or not. But if I had to pick, I would pick RNG. I think I have too much faith in RNG. If they are feeling well and not ill anymore, I think they are just more adapted to play against T1 because they have the better bot lane by far. And I think jungle support in LPL, they just play towards top side or they play towards laners a lot better than the junglers in LCK, jungle supports in LCK.
So stylistically then, Nelson, you're saying that for RNG, jungle support is a crucial thing in this matchup? Because I want to get a grasp on, let's put RNG being sick out of our minds. Let's pretend that RNG are going to be, you know, at full capacity, well enough to play. Even though we're a little bit skeptical, I'd like to think that, you know, they're going to be better by then. Nelson, stylistically, can you put a point on it?
I mean, I think like the meta, if it's like topside meta, I think LPL has shown last year at Worlds and this year at MSI where they would draft. First, they would draft better for bot side so that they could free up support and move him around the map, and also they just have better knowledge of the timings to getting top or dive top. You know, like for example, if the LPL team is on blue side, they know what time the blasting plant on red side spawns, which, you know, blasts you towards top lane tier 1. So, and then they make roam timers around it, and this is something which I don't see LCK teams do much. And even up until like summer, like most junglers are just like perma full clearing, and T1 only made the adaptation after they lost to RNG in MSI.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think T1 is probably slight favorite in my mind. I definitely think RNG can win. Like I'm expecting a 5-game series. But I think that like if Zeus is playing in this form, I mean, Breathe is solid in his own right. I just wonder like if Breathe will be able to like find an answer to the gangplank. Maybe they ban gangplank and they try to force like Fiora Jax matchups.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure. I just think that Zeus is one of the top laners that can actually beat Breathe. I think he's probably one of 2 top laners that I actually think are better than Breathe this tournament, which are Zeus and 369. So that's like, I think that's a definitely a point of strength for T1. And it seems like they're just functioning a lot better as a team. I mean, bot lane looks like they're not inting. I think it's really hard to say though, because obviously, like, you know, when Ruler and Gala are going against each other, that's a completely different thing than, you know, the AD carries in group A. I mean, I think Viper looked fine in lane. But I think like that's another thing. Like Viper didn't really look like himself so far this tournament as well. So I don't know. I think T1 is a slight favorite in my mind. Like maybe like 53-47 or something. I think it's gonna be extremely close.
Yeah, I mean,
good, though.
I think the main issue is I'm not sure if Breathe is better than what Bin was. So I think that's the only issue there. I'm not sure if he could handle Zeus even with help.
Yeah, I think in that point as well, I always looked at it versatility. Like Breathe overall was a better matchup for RNG or a better fit, but when Breathe has his high highs, are they higher than Bin's? You know, at times I'd say no. But that's a longer conversation. That's a longer conversation, and that's going into the way RNG have changed from MSI to now. But I like that you guys are saying this one's close, because again, T1 RNG is going to be really defining for T1 fans, considering that throughout this year there's been a lot of doubts. You know, fans have been very vocal, and if they lost against RNG here, you know, that history would just be, the script will be tattered in pieces. So that's the second quarterfinal. The third one maybe is going to be a little bit more challenging, because Genji versus Damwon Kia. Nelson, do you want to start this off? Because this is region versus region. This is the only, thankfully, region versus region in our quarterfinals. Again, hence being a great draft for our top 8. But Genji versus Damwon Kia are going to be, you know, stylistically, different as well.
Yeah, like thank God we have any casters. You know, they're good at one thing, like giving us a good draw.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow. Nelson.
All right.
I mean, from what I've seen, I feel like they're very, very, very similar in the way like how they want to play, but I think Genji just has like the better pieces almost everywhere. And the only way I could see is if it's like a top-sided meta and Kingen could get a better an edge over Doran, but but none of these top laners are like very high on my tier list. So yeah. Oh, sorry, I mean, yeah, but I think no, Nagori as well. I mean, because he hasn't been playing well this year, and yeah, I'm not sure. Because I think Genji, I mean, clearly is better. They have Chovy and Ruler. I would take them over, at least over the bot lane of Damwon.
I've got jungle diff. Canyon wins it. He's just too good. I hope
Really?
so. I want to see Canyon win. I don't know. Canyon's like one of my favorite players from. I mean, my two favorite players in LCK are Showmaker and Canyon, and I still just want to see them succeed. I think it'd be like such a legendary upset, and I feel like those players are just legendary players in their own right. You know, like they just don't like ever have bad series when it matters. It feels like maybe they'll have a bad game in a series, but they're always solid when it matters. And I think that they've been on the verge of having that breakthrough multiple times this year, right? Like the first series they had versus Gen G in semifinals of spring, the series that they had versus T1 in summer. Like they've been able to bring these series to 5 games, and I think it's about time that they win one. So I'm hoping that the meta favors Dom1 enough that they're able to win. I want Dom1 to win.
I mean, I just want to see Peanut win on his Morgana. That's a real insane.
Maybe.
He's hoping. And Dom as well, we're talking stylistically before. I feel like, Dom1 Kia have been one of the best teams to really, we're talking about top esports not really finding their groove or just playing what they're good at, playing what they love. I feel like Dom1 Kia have been a team that have been playing, their style. We talked about, Canyon on Graves. Yeah, the meta comes around to them, but even things like the Aphelios mentioned before for Docdom has kind of shown that Dom1 Kia are a bit more comfortable in their own skin than other teams.
Yeah, I just hope that they let go of the Maokai jungle, please. Like those are the losses that they had, right? Like those are the two losses that they had are with Maokai jungle, with Canyon on it. And it's like Maokai's strong and everything, but like you don't want to have like what can he do? He's playing Maokai. Like you can't win with the Maokai jungle with your best player. Like that's the pick that you give to your player that's supposed to get in the backpack and get carried by his laners. Like we need to see some Chad jungling. From Canyon to win this. I mean, like I definitely think Gen G is the favorites, but I mean I think that it's closer than people think. I think that the meta has favored Dom1 and hurt Gen G slightly. So I mean I'm expecting it to be pretty close. Slight, I think in my mind it's like a slight favorite. Gen G is a slight favorite, but I'll be rooting for like Dom1. I'll put an official prediction for Dom1. I don't like that's how far I'm willing to go.
All right, you're on the edge a bit, but I like it that you're soaring across the line for Dom1 Kia. Nelson, you said before you favored the players. I just need you with a flat-out answer in your favorite in this. Like, you favor the players, but as Dom mentioned, the meta has been shifting a bit as well.
I mean, I would still pick Gen G. I think they are just better.
All right, well,
you
gave me a flat-out answer.
Just better in every role except jungle, but I think Peanut is just, like, serviceable. And I think definitely a better fit for his team.
All right. That's fair. I mean, for Gen G especially, as you both said, favorites. But I like the varying of answers there as well. Dom1 Kia have been a lot of fun to watch. Let's hope Gen G in the best of 5s as well are the exact same. DRX versus EDG is the last quarterfinal. Nelson, you know what? You're going to kick off with EDG. It's the right way to do things. And I want you to tell me a little bit about this matchup because I had a different opinion on Twitter. I'm not sure if I was completely correct in how these styles go head-to-head, where I'm kind of looking at DRX and going, well, maybe against EDG, this could be a pretty good matchup. Am I right or wrong?
I think they are. I think EDG has like a way better top side and bot side, and I think mid is. I think both mid lane they are like in a way like irrelevant. Where I don't think. I mean, it's not irrelevant as in they're bad, right? Like I don't think either would get an edge against each other, but it would be more. It would be more on draft or. If the meta shifts towards top side again, I'm pretty sure EDG would win that comfortably. Yeah. But otherwise, it's just like Death against Viper, like who it's like the old guard against the new guy. Yeah. But I think EDG would win. I still believe that even in like tank v tank matchups, Flandre is just better, and he could affect the map a lot more than Kingen.
Fair point, Dom. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think DRX is pretty easy to prep for. That's the one thing that I've seen with them. I think you can ban the Heimer out, and you can, just try to, like, what Zika wants to play, right? He wants to play Silas Akali. Play around that. I think if you play around that, I think Scout's a good enough player to contain a player like Zika. I mean, last year when they were both in LPL, I thought Scout was, just a better player than Zika. I rated Zika really highly. I just don't, I don't think that, I think that he's, like a confidence player, and there's certain champions that enable him to like make big plays, and if you take that away from him, I don't think that they'll be looking like the same team. I think Kingen is sus, and I think Pioshik is like very hit or miss. So,
or Jihan.
Yeah, or Duhan. But
They're
I mean, I
both
assume
sus.
Pioshik's gonna play.
But yeah, but I
mean-
think yeah, I mean I saw Zeke in LPL before. I thought he was a 2 trick back then, which was LeBlanc Zoe, and right now it's a Kali Silas. So if you could ban him out, I'm not sure what else he could do.
That's a good point. I mean, it continues from LPL, like you said, a really limited champion pool. You mentioned bot there, Nelson, as well. I mean, a good point is, you know, we kind of talked about Viper and Mako. I mean, I think Mako, excuse me, has been hitting his mark. I think Viper, we still want to see a little bit more of, still more of that LPL prowess. But does it really define this matchup? Like, let's say top was even, mid was even. Do you feel like bot is going to be an easily deciding factor in the 2v2 at the very least?
I mean, for sure, if the other lanes are all even, bot definitely has.
A bad phrasing a question,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think overall, like even how they play out the early game, especially how LPL junglers play out the early game, where they're very willing to skip 3 camps, 4 camps, 5 camps, 6 camps, just to help the lane which their coach instructed them to help. I think that's like extremely important. And it's not like DRX has an insane hard carry jungler where he calculates and times all your camps. Stuff, and they don't like hard play towards Pioshik. So I think if they can, they should be able to shut down Def, and especially if it's like a tank v tank matchup, I think it could be very interesting where top laners just sack plates just to run down to influence bot lane, and then I would favor that for UDG because they're probably the best team in LPL to play towards bot lane.
Okay, that's thank you for fixing up my question with a proper answer at the end as well. Crystal Ball is something I'm going to round out with before we end the show because you guys have given me an amazing detailed feedback on the quarterfinals. We can come back around. I believe we still have one show planned as well where we can start talking about semis, quarters. But finally, I wanted to ask you guys your crystal ball just to revisit it. We looked at it last episode and we gave a general, like, who's going to win Worlds. If it's changed, it's changed. Like, for example, I'm wearing JDG's jacket because top esports are out. I can't get the points for Crystal Ball. I'm flipping the train to JDG. I think they're going to win Worlds. Dom, is yours changed at all? I mean, you're still on JDG's. You're not flipping the script at all, eh?
Nope. There's nothing that's led me to believe that JDG is, like, significantly worse at this tournament or they're not capable of playing the meta. I thought they were going to win coming in. I still think so for the same reasons. It was never based on just like pure gameplay. I think for them, I think they've showed me is like an amount of mental resilience from teams that we just haven't really seen before. And I just think that is just super powerful in best of 5. So I think they have the highest percentage chance to win.
Nelson, has anything changed? Who did you predict before?
I think I predicted RNG.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would still pick RNG. I think if they are feeling well, I think they are overall they have showed the most out of all the teams, and I think T1's. I mean, I think the winner of the tournament would come from the upper bracket. So
oh, really?
It's either JDG or Rogue, T1 or RNG. I think it's one of these.
Rogue, okay, all right.
I mean, if Rogue makes it to the finals, I mean, then you would have to say they're one of the favorites, right?
Well,
I mean,
if they make it,
sure.
That would be something for EU. I tell you what, you know, win maybe a second or first championship, however people want to phrase it. Finally, as well, I'm just going to touch on because Nelson, you mentioned, you know, top side of the bracket you think is going to win. So you think top side of the bracket is stronger, right? So
yeah, I think
by what you're saying,
it's clearly stronger.
Right. Okay. Dom, you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think T1. I mean, the 3 best teams in the tournament to me, or looking like the 3 best teams in the tournament to me, have been Gen.G, JDG, and T1. Those teams look like the strongest right now, and 2 of those are in the top side of the bracket. So I'm gonna say the top side is stronger.
And
hell yeah! Okay.
Do you think RNG is the 4th best?
I think Dom1's the 4th best, and then I'd probably have RNG 5th.
Wow. Okay, that's very balanced. I was expecting more bias, but. Look, I like the balance. And Jens, thank you again for joining me for Worlds Talk number 2. Dom, it's your channel, and I feel really bad. Last time I outroed, I think you should do it. It's your channel. You take the reins for the rest. I'll just sit here. You do the rest.
Well, I mean, I think that the first thing that I saw in the comments was that people want to know who you are, Hysterics. They want to know, like they want you to get the shout out. They want to know where to find you, you know, your social media, what you've been doing, because, you know, a lot of my fans that watch LPL, or they're getting into the LPL recently, they don't know much about you, the host of the show.
Okay, I'm scuffed. I want to make an esports organization where people wear clown suits because my name's Hysterics, but I don't think that'll fly.
Okay.
I don't have the money to invest, but if I did invest, I'd invest in PCS because I think I can make it to the top. Top 8 out of 10 gets in, and I just think that's also scuffed. So that's my goal in life. LPL caster and absolute crap talker who in 3 months of the year doesn't really do much except watch Worlds or MSI and, you know, hangs around the house and does Wing Chun. So that's it. There you go. Bit of working life.
And then for Nelson, I mean, people know Nelson as a Flandre apologist, you know, delusional Flandre, #1 fan, and coach of G2 during 2021, one of the best years in G2's history.
Oh yeah, I just want to say it's probably the worst team I ever coached. But yeah.
Really? Worse than XL?
I think it's like getting 4th was a huge achievement there with their roster.
Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. Flaming the G2 players. Nelson, where do people find you?
I mean, you can find me on Twitter. And,
okay.
And unfortunately, you can find me in Berlin sometimes.
Unfortunately.
All right.
Great.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the episode. Hopefully, you guys enjoy Worlds Talk. I think we have 1 or 2 more left, and we will be back at you after the quarterfinals. See ya.
Yeah, after RG wins.